Hello everyone, my name is Akal and I am a somatic therapist / somatic astrological counselor, lots of names. So what we're going to talk about today is Saturn. Saturn, it's got a lot of negative, I guess, like connotation around it. Pretty much every book you read on it attempts to find a silver lining with this particular placement, and there are indeed silver linings. Ultimately, Saturn is it's a very benevolent energy, but it requires maturity, wisdom, and acceptance in order to get to the point where you can see the silver lining with Saturn. And I'll explain all that as I kind of progress here. So first thing I want to look at with Saturn are the gunas as usual. So the gunas, at its deep kind of level, it functions tamasically, meaning we're talking about density, inertia. It's typically what you would consider the mind. So the mind, even though it's like etheric in nature, it's something that mires us in density. It's something that keeps us contracted into the physical plane, because it's not until we're present in acceptance and in surrender that our energy is then able to expand, and then we can utilize the sort of more expansive aspects of the mind. But with Saturn, the tamasic aspect, like I said, it runs quite deep. And again, keeping in mind that Saturn is a very slow-moving planet, the associations you often see with Saturn is like an old man, old, decrepit, rigid man, which is pretty accurate in terms of like what you end up seeing with Saturn. So, and again, this all makes sense as I move along. Tamasic energy on a deep kind of level, its intent is to kind of give us a consistent and constant slap to the face and tell us to wake up. It means on a very deep level that we need to look outside of ourselves, in order to fulfill our karmic potentials, let's say. And I don't like using the term karma. It really agitates me. When I'm talking about karma, let me set that apart. So when we come into this lifetime, my former mentor, who was anti all forms of spirituality, used to tell me that we come into the world tabula rasa, meaning blank slate. In the case of how I perceive the world, as through my yoga training, etc., I don't see the world as we all come into this physical planet on a blank slate. Once you start to understand DNA and you start to understand all sorts of other things, that this possibility of karma and us coming into the world to fulfill some sort of destiny in some ways, or at very least to live out particular experiences so that we can learn and grow, it all kind of makes more and more sense. Why, for instance, do we keep attracting the same patterns repeatedly over and over and over and over again? With Saturn, this is where we start seeing those patterns repeated over and over and over and over again. So now the reason I say Saturn, there is a silver lining, it has to do with how it also functions sapphically. So meaning it's tamasic energy on a very deep level, but its overall evolutionary intent is to bring about peace, balance, and harmony. This is done through, in a lot of ways, through exclusion, reduction, and contraction of one's life force. So thinking about this idea of our life force being contracted, again, I like to approach all astrology from this sort of yogic perspective of the understanding that there is energy, spirit, flow, whatever you want to call it, life force that's moving through us, prana, chi, etc. All this energy is always moving through us. And so circumstances in life outside of ourselves, as well as our own internal environment, will restrict the flow of that energy. That restriction is necessary. And that's where working with Saturn pays off, is if you can recognize the restriction as necessary and accept it as necessary, then there's a possibility of expansion. Because what Saturn is what Saturn is ultimately driving you toward is this idea of surrender. This idea of surrendering to a higher spirit, or higher energy, form, source, God, whatever you want to call it, the universe, the infinite. Once we learn to surrender those things, we start to see how we're guided. And it is really very much about guiding. So Saturn is always in the background. Again, it moves very, very slowly. It's in the background, and it's kind of, in a lot of ways, is dictating our path. But again, remember what Saturn keeps doing to us is that it keeps externalizing our energy. And it externalizes our energy primarily through pain, fear, and suffering. This pain, fear, and suffering can materialize in the form of mental anguish, emotional or physical anguish, or sometimes environmental circumstances which rise, let's say poverty. Saturn is often associated with the poor folks of the world. So poverty is another form of restriction on one's life force. And what I mean by that is anything that's going to, Abraham Maslow has his pyramid of self-actualization. On the base of the pyramid, really are the fundamental things that we're trying to actualize in our life in terms of safety, security. Really, that's what it's about, root issues around safety and security. And if we don't even have those things actualized, we're constantly being kind of slammed back down to earth in order to sustain our existence. So Saturn represents all forms of restriction on life force. And again, this can come in the form of schools. I hated school. School was the worst day of my life, was the first day of school in kindergarten. And yet I continued. And this tells you about the conditioning of our culture. And this is not just, Western culture. This is all over the world. Saturnian energies are very pronounced. They come in the form of religion, which can be restrictive. Which is funny because religion to me ultimately is trying to lead you to a place of expansiveness in terms of at least in this sort of monotheistic kind of religions, where this idea that once you understand that there is one God, then there's the opportunity to expand, because it's a simplification. In the simplification, again, it's this recognition that this one God, this source energy that exists within us, exists within all matter. And this is very Jupiter in nature. So Saturn and Jupiter operate on kind of a polar spectrum in a lot of ways. So what Saturn ends up doing is, again, through the restrictive process, bosses, laws. The father is associated with Saturn because the father is the one that lays down the laws at home. Again, any restrictive force in your life is going to collapse your energy to some degree, and it's going to get you to focus externally to try to fix it. And again, pain, fear, and suffering are what motivate. So it's funny to look at Jupiter and Saturn once again, in that Jupiter leads you towards the integration of spiritual concepts. It leads you towards the inclusion of all these ideas, all these spiritual concepts, and so that it ends up expanding you. However, Saturn is a very necessary energy because expansion that's done too quickly, can lead to a lot of sort of psychotic episodes. I mean, people whose Kundalini, let's say, wakes up prematurely, they may have experiences which they can't necessarily process. They can't integrate into their everyday life, which is often what happens, let's say, with folks who do, entheogens or hallucinogenic drugs in kind of an unsacred way. It can lead to excessive expansion without the ability to integrate. So what Saturn, like I said, it's here to essentially, all right, let me lay it out in another way. Think about a cat, like kitten, little playful kitten. You ever throw a little kitten in a box? I guess you don't throw a kitten in a box. You place a little kitten in a box. The box is like heaven to the cat. I mean, I used to have a little kitten and it played constantly in the box. It was obsessed with the box. So the box, as the analogy goes here, the box is Saturn. The box is basically what it does is it creates boundaries for which you can play. And boundaries are actually, in a lot of ways, very liberating. So again, when I'm talking about restrictions and contraction on one's life force, it doesn't necessarily mean that this is a bad thing or a negative thing. Again, what it does is it gives you boundaries in which you can move through life, restrictions in which you can move through life. Again, if we have too many expansive ideas and too many possibilities, what ends up happening is we sometimes lose sight of the probability, which is, in my particular case, let's say I fantasize about living in all these different places around the world for whatever reason. The probability is I'm going to wake up in Chicago, Illinois tomorrow. That's the probability. And so there's not a lot of excitement in that notion, but it's a reality. And that's what Saturn wants to do. It wants to bring you back down to earth, bring you back down to reality. So I want to talk now about the difference between denial and delay. So these are two words that get thrown around a lot with, so denials versus delays. Saturn is associated with both denials and delays. So anywhere in your astrology chart where you have your Saturn placed in your natal birth chart, that is, what you're going to see is you're going to see the energies of that particular house or the associations with that particular house are simply delayed. Like for instance, Saturn is very personal for me. I have my Saturn conjuncting my moon. My moon sits in the 8th house, right on the cusp of the 7th house, and my Saturn sits in the 7th house, again, just sort of right across from my moon. So they're very, very close together. I've experienced most of my life, because again, the moon is sort of your emotions. It's your internal environment. It's how you process your reality internally. And I've had this restrictive energy on it. Now, this is a bit anecdotal, but during my Saturn's return, which starts right around the age of 27 to 28, and it'll continue, at least I didn't notice any relenting of that energy, of the contraction of my life force until about 35. So this contraction of my life force, it led to, and again, I had my Saturn restriction on my emotional body, so I felt tremendous physical discomfort and tension. Now, how does that play out? For me, it played out a number of different ways. One is it forced me into situations in which which I was looking for greater intimacy in life. I was looking for things that were going to allow me to open up, but it also pressurized me in a lot of ways towards yoga, towards meditation, towards those things which would help me release that physical discomfort, that physical tension. And again, because I have Saturn in the 7th house and it sits close to the 8th house, the issue here a lot of times, had to do around, I guess, my emotions and things like that. But also, again, the idea of the 7th house is relationships. So it means delays or denial of relationships. Now, denial and delay, now the difference lies in here. So delay, as I perceive it, simply means you're learning lessons as you move along. As you progress along your life path authentically, if you progress along authentically, meaning you're paying attention to how the universe is communicating to you through your intuition, if you're honoring that path, then what ends up happening, you simply experience delays. Saturn, for me, slowed down my maturation process in terms of relationships. I've gone from one relationship to the next, to the next, to the next, and I grow every single time. So in a way, it's how I'm karmically playing out in this lifetime. I'm here to learn and grow from relationships. Hence, 7th house. So it's simply a delay in my case. And I've met, I'm not going to go into details, but, I'm 43 now, and I'm going into situations with greater stability, greater understanding, and, for all intents and purposes, I'm a much better partner now than I ever was prior. So again, it's delays. Now, denial is, whether it's in financial matters or if it's relationships or if it's in any of the houses where you place Saturn, you may get denial if you refuse to address those discomforts in life. And instead, let's say you sink deeper into, again, we're looking at tamasic energy here, into inertia, into density, back into hell. The idea here is the deeper in the density you go, the closer to hell you are. Now it's kind of a hell on earth concept. It's as we become liberated from that density, as we start to experience heaven on earth, so to speak. The weight is lifted off our shoulders. We feel more liberated, etc. So the denial of energy, or the denial of life force, or the denial of growth in a particular house will sometimes occur, again, if the person continues to externalize their energy, if they continue to look externally in life for guidance. Then what ends up happening is they're not following their true path. They're not following their authentic path. And then instead, they're following this external authority. Saturn's impact. Saturn's impact, long-term versus short-term. So short-term impact can, again, what it can do is it can lead to kind of an isolation. It can lead to antisocial behavior, immoral, unspiritual behavior, etc. Over the long term, though, and again, the assumption here is that you're learning and growing. Over the long term, though, it's inner strength. I'm so tempted to make cultural commentary right now. Well, let's say this. Insulating one another, insulating kids, insulating college students, insulating people from triggers and traumatic experiences in life, although well-intended, it ultimately doesn't create a great deal of resilience or inner strength. And the unfortunate thing is that the pain, fear, and suffering doesn't go away. It will simply be delayed, and it'll come to you later in life. So we can't insulate our children and college students and things like that from all the triggers in existence. The fact of the matter is that the world is both expansive, wonderful, and glorious, as well as painful, uncomfortable, and contracting and rigid. So last couple of things I want to say about Saturn is, and this is a much broader statement here, is this is something I kind of asked you guys to do. So I would say that the world we live in and that we've lived in for a very long time is Saturnian in nature in terms of its governing bodies. Look for black cubes. Anywhere you see black cubes in the world, what you're seeing is a statement by the people who are running these organizations or religions, etc. You're seeing the statement that we are Saturnian in nature. We're here to keep you all grounded in the physical plane, to reduce your ability to expand, to keep you focused on laws and rules and restrictions. And I don't mean this in a conspiratorial way. I simply mean this in that this is just how it works, is that humanity functions in a lot of ways in this present age through constructs and structures. So, and again, these constructs and structures right now, you can look at government, for instance. Government has an unusual kind of rigidity. I shouldn't say unusual. It has a kind of rigidity that, I guess, keeps it mired in the status quo. Politics is inherently always trying to hold on to the status quo until the rebels come out and start to rabble-rouse. But even that rabble-rousing takes some time before it really takes any real effect, because politics is always waiting around for popular opinion to change. So there's a lot of rigidity there, and it's a very Saturnian structure. So the end results of Saturn, again, if you're not honoring the growth that is associated with it, is rigidity, lack of spontaneity. Let me find some other words. Let's see. Limitations, conformity to consensus, etc. And ultimately what this leads to is a restriction, I guess, on your creative potential. So, and I guess in a lot of ways, like the inability to adapt. So the last thing I want to say on Saturn is, I want to talk about the illusion. So Saturn is really very much engaged with what is real versus what is illusion. So Saturn is here to essentially to destroy our dreams, to destroy our fantasies, to destroy our illusion. It's, like I said, it's a great planet, right? It brings us right back to reality. I think about all the potentials that I saw when I was like in my 20s. I wanted to do this, I wanted to do that, all these different things, very expansive. Saturn return happened at 28, 27, whatever it was. And, everything became much clearer because I realized I wasn't going to be able to do all the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of different things I could potentially see myself doing. So Saturn is very sobering in that regard. So So I'm going to go ahead and show you now how I made the connection between Saturn and aspect 7 in Yogi Bhajan's book, The Mind. He calls aspect 7 the strategist. All right, so here is Yogi Bhajan's book, The Mind. And in the back of the book, we have a flow chart, which I love flow charts. You can tell mine's like very loved. So this is the flowchart of the universal mind. Here's Tamas, Rajas, and Sattva, which are, once again, the three fundamental energies that underlie all existence, or the gunas is what they're called. So Saturn, tamasic energy, manas, or mind. On a basic, deep level, it says the impersonal mind, meaning it's kind of functioning in the background, whether you're aware of it or not. Now you follow the line over here to the neutral mind. And aspect 7, the strategist. So what you do now is you flip through the book. You find that aspect 7. I guess I should pre-mark the pages. And here's aspect 7. Here are the qualities. The meditation, oh, this one's fun. And done for 11 to 31 minutes. And in the next segment, I'm going to go ahead and show you how to do this particular meditation. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and show you now how to do aspect 7, or the strategist. This particular meditation's got a very complex mantra. The mantra is meant to be done from the navel point. Anytime you, in Kundalini Yoga, anytime you see H-A-R, har, there's two things going on. One is the pulling in of the navel point, or the belt line. So again, think about the navel point as 2 to 3 fingers below the actual navel. So it's approximately the belt line. So you're going to be pulling it in with each one of the har sounds. The other thing that happens with har is the navel point and then the tongue flicks the roof of the mouth. So essentially what you're doing is you're dividing your awareness. When I say awareness, it's your sense of feeling is what we want to really be tuning into here. And anything that's going to bring you into a sense of feeling is going to help you ground into the body. Because it's within the form, within the vehicle, where all the latent energies lie. So, and again, we're talking about Saturn with this particular exercise. So it's the tendency to get stuck in the mental. It's to get stuck in our woes, our aches, our pains, our discomfort in life, whether it's environmental or if it's emotional, mental, or whatever it may be. So what we're doing here is we're anchoring our awareness into the physical form through contact points, through sensations. And the other thing we're also doing is we're tuning into sound. So we're going to be harmonizing or tuning into sound because this meditation definitely has a flow that happens, that's created once you get comfortable with the words involved. But once you kind of attune to sound, then the potential for expansion occurs. So let's see here. So now the words, I'm going to put them down at the bottom of the screen, and you can refer to them as we go along. But with every one of the words, there's always two HARs, two har hars for each one. So it's har har Govinde, har har Mukande, har har Urare, har har Appare, har har Haryang, har har Karyang, har har Nirname, har har Akame. And again, with each one of these enunciations, so har har Gobinde, I'm pulling in my navel point gradually. So it's har har Gobinde, navel point pulls in and in more. Next line on the mantra, har har Mukande, etc., down through all 8 lines. And so it's this, again, always activating our body's center of gravity, which again is the navel area. Two of the words, Haryang and Karyang, those 2 words you want to resonate because the ANG at the end of the words resonates up here in the sinus. So what ends up happening is that when you're doing ong, the ANG part, your tongue's going to go once again to the roof of the mouth and it's going to create a vibration up there. So again, sensation and feeling. I guess I keep saying sensation and feeling because the tendency for a lot of folks when they're doing mantra is to become kind of mechanical about it and to end up functioning in the mind, or they're worried about the pronunciation, or they're worried about any of a number of things, and they lose sight of what really matters, which is the feeling and the sensations. This is how energy is allowed to expand in this way, is that it's an anchoring effect. You move your awareness into something solid so that expansion can occur. Because once you move into something solid, you're getting something very valuable, which is you realize this is home. This is where security, true security lies, because this vehicle, this home, is coming with you no matter where you go in life. From point A to point B, from birth to death, it's with you. You can have various, I guess you can have conflicted relationships with this form, but the reality is that it's still, even if you have a conflicted relationship with it, it's still part of our spiritualization process is to connect to the physical body. So now the mudra is also complicated. It's a very intense meditation. So what we're going to do with the mudra is you're going to line up your hands together. You're going to get the index fingers, cross them over, and then you're going to make like a triangle. So thumbs down below, index fingers crossed, middle finger, ring finger, and pinky are all touching. And then what you're going to do is you're going to stick your nose inside that little hole. Hopefully you can see that. And you want to have your thumbs down below your nostrils, but not blocking your nostrils. So what we're going to be doing here is with each one of the sounds you're going to be making. So again, I'll start with har har Gobinde. So with har har Gobinde, you're going to be pressing, again, just gently pressing, creating a sensation of pressure. So it's going to be middle finger, har, ring finger, har, pinkies touch, Gobinde. And now for the next line, which is har har Mukande, you're going to move pinky, har, ring finger, har, and then middle finger, Mukande. So you're going essentially back and forth between these 3 fingers with each line of the mantra. And again, there's 8 lines. So back and forth, back and forth. Again, creating a pressure with each one of the fingers, creating a touch with each one of the fingers. So I'm going to go ahead and hold it up. Oh, and also with the dristi or the eye position, there's nothing prescribed. So my suggestion is either eyes closed and rolled up at the brow point, or eyes at the tip of the nose. I'm going to do the tip of the nose. But again, you're going to have your nose placed in that opening that's created. So I'll go one round through this just to see, you're going to be able to tell what's going on with my fingers, but I'm going to go ahead and do this for you. So it's har har Gobinde, har har Mukande, har har, urare, har, appare, har, haryang, har, karyang, har, nirname, har, akame. And then when you want to finish, after 11 to 31 minutes, you inhale, retain the breath. You want to retain the breath for 10 to 20 seconds. And you want to exhale. Usually I retain out. Again, 10 to 20 seconds. And you want to do this 3 times, and then you'll inhale, exhale, and relax the hands. So another couple things what this meditation is doing, so the hands being by the brow point. If you wave your hands around in your energy body, around your field, there are times, I do this practice kind of on a regular basis, which is I'll find the energy between my hands, that sort of sensation of a pull or a push sensation between my hands. You call it a chi ball, whatever you want to call it. And sometimes I'll just simply move it around in my field. And there'll be a point where it's like I hit something where it feels like it's solid. And now I'll keep it there. And then I'll go into kind of a meditative place. And I'll notice that it seems like it's clearing something by doing this. So when you have your hands this close to your brow point, in a lot of ways what you're doing is you're clearing your arc line, you're clearing the, I don't want to say clearing, you're helping to bring your awareness back into your center, which is here all the way down to your navel point area. So again, recentering is what this meditation does very intensely, as well as it clarifies a lot of the energy around the head. So, and it's also because your arms are suspended upward, it also creates a strong pull, again, because your navel point is pulling in, which is pressurizing energy upwards, but it's creating a strong pull of energy towards the heart as well. So I think that's all I want to talk about this particular meditation. I appreciate you watching this video, and hope you have a good day.